Are reformulations inevitable, or do companies just haste to profit?
I am inevitable.
Those of you who follow us on Instagram are aware that I recently went on a 5-day perfumery course in the Cotswolds in the UK, in a beautiful area called Bourton-on-the-Water. It was over £1,000, which is about $1,500. Was it worth it? Absolutely. I thought it was phenomenal. The perfumery industry is usually very much gatekept. Was that a real word? But yeah, it seems very mysterious. This course opened my eyes completely, guys. It taught me about the basic chemistry of perfumery, how to make your own fragrances, how to become an independent perfumer. I can now go and make fragrances a lot more confidently myself. And I just taught you about the industry, the secrets, and what actually is allowed or isn't, and about regulation in general. So, to save you guys some money and to tell you also about my experience, I'm going to share with you guys the secrets that the fragrance industry does not want you to know. Before we get into it, guys, this is going to be a little bit more technical, with more detail in this video. If you really want the true basics of fragrances and to make sure you're only getting the very best in your collection, check out our Skillshare course. It is 24 minutes long. It does not waste your time. It tells you everything you need to know about fragrances, what are the best to have in your collection, how to make sure you're making your fragrances last longer, how to apply, and where to buy your fragrances from. It is the bare bone basics. It's got a lot of good reviews so far. There's almost 200 students we've had. If you use the free trial that everyone gets in Skillshare, you can watch our course for free, but I recommend you actually use Skillshare. It is a phenomenal website. This video is not sponsored. For example, if you guys like my editing that I had on this channel, you'll know that I actually learned how to edit videos from Skillshare, from my friend Ali Abdal's video course. So it's a very useful website. You know, any skill you want to learn, go ahead and do that. I'll put a link in the description below. Check out our course. Let's carry on with this video and teach you more about the fragrance industry. Class is in session. To give you guys more information about the fragrance industry, I asked you guys on Instagram to give me some questions for me to answer. So I'll be answering a lot of your questions. Let's go for at least 15. Let's see how this video goes. Serjan asks, I don't know, bro, but eau de toilette is so weak. Like, man's trying to pull, but that shit disappears, man. The reason you're getting cock blocked is because not every eau de toilette is the same. Fragrances don't actually have a legal definition of what a concentration should be. So you can actually have an eau de parfum have about 7% of fragrance oil in the final product, but usually the industry standard, people try to aim for at least 15 to 20% for eau de parfum. Eau de toilette is about 8 to 14. So these are very rough numbers. Bear that in mind, guys. It's, you know, it's a little bit like they're pulling wool over your eyes with some products. Ericus Ankus asks, can you get cancer from using fragrances? You should not, because IFRA gives advice for all fragrance industries about CMRs. CMR stands for carcinogens, mutagenics, and reprotoxics, meaning that you shouldn't have any substances in your fragrances that causes cancer, things that cause mutations in your DNA, or anything that can lower your sperm count, for example. We've changed the background, guys, so there's less noise. This next question is controversial. Alessio D has asked, prices are definitely a taboo topic. How much does it actually cost for production, and the difference between designer and premium fragrances? So for designer fragrances, they are not going to cost more than a few pounds, especially if you're getting from a big designer brand that have the advantage of economies of scale. They can pay for a lot of bottles in one go, so each individual unit will be cheaper. So if they're making 1 million bottles in one day, for example, it's going to be, yeah, definitely cheaper for them than it would be for a smaller brand. For niche fragrances, the production costs are higher, but even so, they still probably wouldn't be more than 10, 15 pounds for the actual fragrance and packaging. So what are we paying for as consumers? Are they just making insane profits off us? In reality, you're actually paying for not the marketing and for the distribution. So if you're paying, your brand, for example, has a celebrity advertising your fragrance, the consumer are gonna have to pay for that. If you have brick and mortar stores that have rent to pay as well as their staff to pay, they're gonna have to put that into the cost. So bear those things in mind, guys. The majority of what we're paying for as consumers is not the actual product. Gennard K11 asks, how do they actually come up with the smell of the DNA of fragrances? So the question is it a niche house or a big designer house? If you're a big designer house, you're generally going to commission perfumers from the big 5 fragrance companies. So these aren't the brands themselves, but the people who make the perfumes for the brands. So these are going to be Firmenich, Givaudan, IFF. And the difference between them and niche brands is that they have fragrance evaluators. They're not necessarily trying to make the best fragrance necessarily for themselves personally. They're trying to see what is trending on the market, and they have an entire team that will try to predict that a fragrance DNA will do well and sell successfully. Because bear in mind, these companies are losing millions every time a fragrance flops. So maybe that also increases the price that you pay as a consumer. So if you really want the finest perfumery, you stick to niche houses, to be honest. But if you want something that's going to be more likely to be pleasant and get you more compliments, designer houses are more likely to have that. This is obviously all generalizations, guys. Hani RMA says, I just want to say we have to make a campaign to bring back discontinued fragrances. That would not be successful, my friend, because one of the big things I learned from this course is that there are big changes in regulations that happen very erratically. You can have 1 year where this oak moss is legal, and then the next you have to cut it down by a factor of 100. Some of these discontinued fragrances would just not exist at all in today's climate of regulation. Not even, oh, let's modify them slightly, like no, they just would not have the same scent DNA. That's why your Davidoff Cool Water from the 1980s is going to smell extremely different to what we have today. IFRA are becoming more and more strict every year. For example, nowadays there are 26 allergens every product needs to have listed on its box. That is increasing to 82 in the very near future. So things are becoming strict and perfumers have to work around these regulations. So sorry bro, I don't think a lot of these discontinued fragrances are coming back. Rowan MK asks how scarce materials are. So this will depend on the fragrance. How much of it is naturals? Because natural ingredients can become scarce very suddenly. For example, if you're getting your jasmine from Egypt and then they have a flood that takes out all the crops, you just lost your jasmine absolute. Or for example, there's political turmoil in this country that you get your vetiver from, you suddenly have huge spikes in cost, or potentially people trying to undercut the material itself, trying to lower the quality. So that can actually vary batches quite significantly the more naturals you have. This is an interesting question. Cool Hand Eric asks, are there any notes that you appreciate even more now? Did some become less impressive? There is one note that I have a much greater appreciation for, and that is ambroxan. Now, when you think of ambroxan, you think of a very, appealing but harsh synthetic smell. The original ambroxan molecule is very expensive and it smells so much better than what we have on the market. What people use nowadays is alternatives like Ambro Fix, which is trying to replicate ambroxan. But John showed me the 2 materials, I smelled them both. Actual ambroxan, the expensive stuff, is 100 times better, but it's 100 times more expensive probably as well. It's a lot more expensive. Why do I not like Prada Lum? That's because Prada Lum is a clone of Dior Homme Eau, which I think did that DNA better. It smells more masculine. And a good point I learned from this perfumery course is that people can copy other fragrances, not from learning the formulations, because those formulations stay secret, they're a secret recipe for these fragrances, but they need good perfumers who can smell a fragrance and try to break it down from top, mid and base. Each note, as you're going through the paper strips, you can recreate that fragrance. That's probably how the vast majority of these fragrance houses create clones. Mirza Ahmed 93 asks, what is the secret about fragrance projection? It's basic chemistry. The smaller the molecule is, the more it'll go farther out. It's lighter, it dissipates more easily. Those are usually your top notes. As well as the second secret being odor yield, basically how strong an individual fragrance note is. For example, clove oil is very potent. If you use 1 too many drops in your fragrance formulation, you completely overpower the entire scent with that note and you have to start all over again. So basically, yes, top notes as well as strength of the individual ingredients. This is a very good point, guys. This will change the way you look at fragrances forever. JG Parfum has asked, fragrance notes. My perfumer said that they don't describe a lot of stuff in perfumes. Yes, the notes that you actually see on the website or Fragrantica is all marketing, because most perfumers are going to use a lot of raw materials And basically they smell the fragrance in the end, and what they say is, how can I describe my fragrance? That's what notes actually are. They don't really give you a representation of the raw materials used. A lot of the time it's more that, okay, the most prominent thing I'm getting in the base here is the woodiness. I'm getting mainly the orange in the top, but you can have a lot more raw materials in there. So if you ever feel like you are smelling a note in your fragrance that isn't actually listed, that's a good chance that there actually is that note in there. Bear that in mind, guys. The perfume notes you see on the websites is not a true representation of the materials they've used. A9CFF, how can you increase your sense of smell? I don't know what you mean by this, but I'll let you guys know that coffee beans do not reset your sense of smell. That's just a gimmick that department stores use. If you feel like your nose has been overwhelmed, you need to just take a break. Don't smell fragrances for at least 10 minutes or so. Jack Heyman says, I wish a bottle would display a list online or on the box, all natural ingredients used versus synthetic ones. I understand where you're coming from. There are legal obligations that companies must adhere to. They have to show the allergens that are contained in the box, but otherwise they don't have to give you their full ingredients. They just say parfum. That's a generic name for their own formulation. That's because it would be like Mr. Krabs sharing the Krabby Patty formula to everyone when it's their secret. So you don't want other brands ripping you off. So yeah, no, you're not going to see naturals versus synthetics on these boxes. They're not going to share their secrets.
All right, then keep your secrets.
Hypnotic Poison Girl. Is it a fact to say that one should not trust most fragrance influencers as they only hype fragrances that they are paid to advertise? Well, any honest fragrance influencer should be transparent and say when a fragrance brand is paying for a promotion. The vast majority of the time, pretty much the only times you'll see this is for smaller niche independent brands. You're not going to see Dolce & Gabbana or Chanel paying a YouTube channel 50k subscribers to advertise their products because financially it makes no sense. They're huge anyways. These are very small numbers to them. So yeah, like the popular names like Bleu de Chanel, Dolce & Gabbana, the vast majority of fragrances on people's channels are not going to be paid for, but if they are, the influencer should say it's a promotion. Will Geriner, how do we get started making our own? Good question. You buy the perfume raw materials, those are naturals and synthetics. You buy a lot of glass pipettes and you buy a lot of glass containers, and you basically experiment. You can do this in your own house. Anyone can just start their own fragrance lab kit, and it's basically a skill. You play around with the notes, see what notes work well with others, how strong individual ingredients are, and over time you become an independent perfumer and you can make your own fragrances and market them if you want to. M. Alberti, the use of cruelty-free materials. Does everyone replace castoreum, for example? Castoreum traditionally used to come from beavers. There's other ingredients like civet, which came from the civet cat, that they use in perfumery. Nowadays, very unlikely to ever get animal products in your fragrances. They are now all synthetics, all synthetic replicates. And I think we'll end with this question here from my good friend Sentinel. Are reformulations inevitable, or do companies just haste to profit? So there are two main reasons why a fragrance will get reformulated. First of all is yes, some companies have accountants that look at the costs of different production processes and they say, okay, why is the perfume formulation so expensive? Why don't you cut down here? Take this expensive ingredient that smells fantastic, replace it with this cheaper alternative. That does happen, that is true. And then, as I said earlier in this video, there are big regulation shifts that can happen at any moment. From each set of guidelines by IFRA, things will change, so bear that in mind. Did you guys enjoy this video? Was it educational? And do you feel that you've learned a lot about the fragrance industry? Did I increase transparency here? Overall, you need to take the course, to be honest. This is only scratching the very surface. It was fantastic. John was a fantastic teacher, and I highly recommend it. I will leave their Instagram alias here on the screen somewhere. Go follow them, guys, especially if you're from the UK. Make sure to check out our course as well in the Skillshare, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Make sure to check out our other videos. Class dismissed.